You say, look at you, Gore, look at you, girl.
Hey, Andre.
Hey, Tara.
Hi. We're just about to start.
Mhm.
I've got we're a little late. My bad.
Tara, when aren't we late? It seems like we're always late for these things, but I'm never late for my appointments. But somehow this 11 is not really 11.
I know. It's because it's I don't know, Monday. It's me. I never feel ready. I don't know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yet here we are.
here we are. Here we are. I was trying to set a notification for people to join us, but it doesn't seem to be working. So that's okay. We can just start. I wonder why that's not working. Oh well, no worries. Welcome. Let's get
Hello.
ourselves on camera. Hey,
How are you?
I'm okay. You know, a little sick, but
Yeah, huh?
I'm recovering. Yeah, there's something about coming to Toronto. I think maybe because I'm far away from you.
Very interesting. Yeah, I wonder what it means.
I don't know, but it's
Mhm.
curious.
Well,
So let's. Mhm.
there is literature supporting the idea that being in love, being in close proximity with those who do make us feel good, does boost our immune system. Right? It makes us feel good. There are a lot of there's a lot of good chemistry when we have that. In the same way, when we're stressed out with certain people, it can lower our immunity. So, we are not an island. We are definitely impacted by, and it's fun to recognize and see how it affects us,
Yes,
or can
exactly.
affect us less.
All right. So welcome everybody to Mondays with Tara and Andre. So if you can hear us and see us, please give us a yes or a fire emoji in the chat.
Hmm.
And let us know if you're joining us live, hashtag live, or in the replay, hashtag replay. So today's topic, we were chatting about metamours the other day. And interestingly, sometimes I feel like the topics for these lives come to me and then come to us, and then all of a sudden there's people that say join the group or mention things that they're struggling with, and so people have recently been talking about metamours and kitchen table polyamory. So we thought today we would do, our topic would be to go through some like common definitions, so
Hmm.
metamours and more.
Yeah. It's amazing that there is this language, right? That there is a vocabulary that we can go to. And in the beginning, I think it might seem kind of overwhelming. I know it was for me. There were so many different words and so many different terms. But then, a lot of them seem to kind of make sense, and we can go through them, and they become kind of self-evident. And others, they just seem to come out of nowhere for me. And you know they they're now part of my vocabulary. But what's quite interesting is I spent a fair amount of time with my aunt this weekend, and she's of a slightly different generation, as you could imagine. But anyway, we were talking about what it was like for each of us as a kid growing up, and how my grandma, her mother, was so open about sex and sexuality and relationships and all that, uh, it was never held in any kind of judgment. It was just open and be curious, be consensual, be respectful. But basically, it is a gift from the gods. And it was really wonderful to hear her talk about how it was for her, the openness of it. But then she said, we started talking about one thing, and she had said, "Oh, yeah, but I was never afraid of getting involved with anybody because uh, I knew that if this guy left, I had five others." So she was dating five guys at the same time and was polyamorous, but didn't have a
Oh,
name for it necessarily. She just thought that that was her norm, and it certainly was. But now I look back and I say, well, that sounds like it was very oriented towards polyamory, except she wasn't necessarily doing it in a ethically open way. It was like,
ah,
well, I have these guys and they're all, vying for my attention, which is fine. And she never led them on thinking that they were the only one, but she didn't come out and say there are other suitors. Whereas
yeah.
Whereas now, the difference for me anyway is that I don't have to hide it. I make sure that people know about it because I feel better about myself being ethically open about it. But recognizing that I am polyamorous, I want to be a social butterfly. I want to see many people. And monogamy is wonderful if it works for you. But at the moment, in the past, it didn't really work for me. But anyway, all that to say, I discovered that she was polyamorous, and I come from a long line of polyamorists.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
think that I come from the opposite,
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're
or at least
transcendent.
officially the opposite. That's not to say people didn't have desires that were otherwise. I mean, my dad was pretty handsome as a young man, and I think my mom
Mhm.
did say he was dating a lot of different people. In fact, I think she even dated him for a bit, and then they broke up and she dated other people, but then they eventually found their way back to each other. Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So
Mhm.
before we're just going to cover like maybe 6 or 7 little definitions. But before we do that, if anyone has anything definitions they want us to cover,
Oh, yeah.
you can put them in the comments. Put us on the spot, or share a definition that you didn't know about and have recently found out about. That's kind of cool too, because I
Mhm.
find that there's like new terms being developed all the time. And so, yeah, one of them I'm going to share today. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, so for those of you who are joining us and don't know us, I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
Indeed, you are awesome. And I am Andre Turcotte. I'm a sex positive registered psychotherapist.
So we're the co-founders. We found this group, Let's Talk Polyamory, actually during the pandemic, with the
Mm.
idea of connecting people, but also supporting people in navigating open and polyamorous relationships. And since then, we developed our awesome group program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery, which takes you through the 7 steps, 7 must-haves, as we called them in one of our lives, on having a great relationship. And I really love our program. We've taken several people through it, and it's been super successful. So if people want to find out about it, let us know. And so every week we come here live with some
Mhm.
hot tips and training from what we've learned in our journey and that the journeys of those that we worked with, because everybody's journey is a little different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said, that what we've learned, because yeah, it's so amazing to think back how this started, right? It was during the pandemic, and originally it was just a way of trying to keep in touch with our friends, right? One common platform where everybody could come to. And then from there, we realized that there was this need or desire on our part, but also a need in the community to have a place that was beyond just a hookup site where people
Yeah.
could come together as community, talk about what's on their mind. We could just explore all things relating to how we relate to each other, our own sexual expressions, our own sexual identities. And it could be not only a place of a community, but for resource and education. So it's really
Yeah.
amazing how it sprung from that. And yeah, it's amazing to get the feedback, people saying that it is beyond entertaining for them, hopefully, that they also get something out of it. So that's really cool. And we teach each other. We learn these new words. We're going to learn them.
Yeah. So I was going to say something related to that. Oh, so if people have questions or comments and want to share them in the group and start a discussion, please do. We're happy for you to do that. And yeah, let's talk about all the things. One of the other things we love to do is events. And so we have
Yeah.
an event coming up in less than 2 weeks now.
Can you
It's the
imagine?
Toronto Pride Parade on
Yay.
Sunday, June 25th. So we did this last year and it was super fun. We've got such a great gallery of photos, and I have to share this, Andre, because I just
Oh,
love it.
no.
Come on. This picture, someone just recently shared an article from the CBC about funding that the federal government's doing for this extra safety for Pride events. And this is they picked 2 pictures out of like probably a bajillion that the CBC took at that event, and it's of you.
That is
And
me. I cannot lie.
I love this picture though, because this to me symbolizes what pride is all about. And I
Mm.
know you're self-conscious probably of me sharing this. But I just love this moment. I remember this guy came up to you and said that he wanted to hug you, and you were like, by all means. And then you had this beautiful embrace. And I think,
Mm.
that's what pride is all about, is connection and
Mhm.
celebrating love and celebrating our identity. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that and don't think there should be such events. Um, but I know
Then don't come.
then don't come. I know. And so if you want to join us, we set up a page. It's free to join. We're going to have a little gathering
Mm.
at our place here in the village in Toronto in advance so that we can get ready and excited. So we'll make sure we drop that link. So that's
Yeah.
coming up. So I'm super excited. Okay. So
that wasn't too bad. That was survivable. Okay.
that was survivable. There was some great photos. It was very like I put together a little gallery to go along with the page, the sign up page, and looking through those photos last year, remembering how much fun we have. And we have seen a bunch of the pictures others took. There's one of me that I particularly love, waving my ribbon and living my best life. So it's there, but yeah, it's an awesome event, and we hope if you're going to be in the Toronto area that you will join us. So let's get on.
It's well said about that picture, about the feeling, because for me, really, it is about that inclusiveness and also the coming together and just the feeling, the sharing of those energies. And this was a stranger I'd never seen before, never saw again, but for a moment, we both connected and shared this beautiful, loving energy. And that's awesome when all these hundreds of thousands, millions of people come together and say, yes, I'm also wanting to be part of this, and we are included.
And I think, you were talking about polyamory and why it's important to you. And I think that that's another piece of it, is because I think that you are a very loving person. You have a lot of love to share. And I think that suits well to being polyamorous, because it's part of what we can be with this identity. So let's jump into
many loves.
Many loves. So today we're going to cover a few terms. So metamour, like we said, kitchen table polyamory. I'm going to mention garden party polyamory because I think that's such an interesting term. Parallel polyamory, V relationships, satellite and comet partners, unicorns and unicorn hunting, but only briefly since we did a whole talk on that, and compersion. So let's jump in. So if anyone has any other definitions they'd like to share, or if they have different definitions of these, please drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear from them. So metamour.
In no particular order, not alphabetically, but we'll start with metamour.
Yeah, I kind of put them in the order that kind of made sense to flow together in some way in my brain. Yeah. So metamour, the partner of my partner, basically. So if I'm dating someone, that someone would be your metamour.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And I would be their metamour.
What's that?
And I would be their metamour. It goes both ways.
It goes both ways, yeah. So it's basically the partner of your partner. It's a nice term, I think, metamour.
Yeah, and it forms a V, right? Which we'll come back to in just a moment.
Not necessarily, though.
Well, okay, stand corrected. Yeah, you caught me. I said it, I was right. Well, let's talk about that. Yeah.
So I think when we originally thought about this topic, you wanted to talk specifically about metamours, and I think, and we'll get into it a bit in kitchen table and garden party and even V relationships, but about metamours and our relationships, because we may or may not have a relationship with our metamours, depending on how we identify.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, for sure. I have a couple of metamours that I've never met, and it works out perfectly fine like that. And then there are other metamours, friends of yours, that I have met and have developed a relationship with and get along quite well. But it's not a prerequisite that we be friends or that we know each other, but it is an option. And it depends on each individual case by case. And in our case, I have what I consider to be two primary partners, and you are each other's metamours. And at certain points in our lives, we've actually not only lived on the same block, but lived in the same house for a short amount of time, right? So there you go. There's the three of us. And it's fun and fantastic, and also kind of like living with a pack of cats. It's just, who knows what's going to happen. But what's fantastic about it is that even in those times when it kind of did go off the rails or did go a bit south, to our credit, the three of us, we were all able to literally come around this kitchen table and talk about what was going on, right? We were able to talk about it. We communicate well, and that's awesome.
Yeah. So I know some people who've been in the group, come in the group, said they don't like their metamour. And what do you do if you don't like your metamour?
Well, that's fantastic. So you might ask yourself, why don't you like them, right? So is it simply a question of possessiveness or jealousy, or they're taking away from your time, or are you getting a red flag feeling about them? Are they in any way inappropriate, or God forbid, God forbid they be abusive, right? So maybe there is justification not liking them, but there's nothing, again, that says that we have to be chummy with them, that we have to be friends with them. it's not our choosing, it's our partner's choosing who they're going to be with. But maybe we do have a relationship where we feel as though something's not quite right. And we might then invite exploration about that. We might communicate about it and talk about why don't we like them. But at the end of the day, it's not for our to like them. It's not our choice. It's not our decision.
Yeah, and I think some people have a hard time with it, especially if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, you nest with them, it's their primary partner. And, I think sometimes people can see things happen, like maybe their partner's acting differently or that sort of thing. So like anything, like you said, it's stuff that we need to talk to with our partners and, create the environment, a safe environment in which to share those things and share our concerns.
But again, I would really start with looking at my own motives first, right? What is going on? What's informing me? What's driving this reason for me not to like them? Is it about me or is it about that other person? Where in the blend. But it all starts with that ability and willingness to communicate openly and honestly.
I'm still waiting for. Are you going to sing a song today? You got your guitar there? I heard you strumming before we started.
No,
while I was upstairs.
It's more like my pacifier. It's more like my soother to just make me feel comfortable and stuff. I'm not quite ready for public performance yet, especially if it's being recorded, but we'll see.
Okay, so you mentioned talking together with our metamours around the table. So that's a good segue into our next definition, which is kitchen table polyamory. So there's lots of definitions for this as well, and everyone does it differently, but generally it refers to polyamory. Oh my God, my words today. Relationships where everyone is comfortable basically sitting around a kitchen table. So people who prefer this type of polyamory want to know their metamours in some way. So be acquaintance with them or friends with them. So they may want to actually literally sit at the table with them, have dinner together. They may want their kids or their to spend time together, and they can be anywhere from, I'd say, acquaintances to like really good friends and people we talk to on a regular basis.
And in my mind, as you say, there are many definitions, many interpretations of this. I like the one that you are describing, but in my mind, I also chart this close to relationship anarchy, right? Where there seems to be less of a hierarchy because everybody is invited to the table. It's not to say that, you're being with your nesting partner, for example, so you discount the other people. We're saying that we're all in this kind of together and that we should all be heard and we should all be seen. And it is the invitation for that inclusion, right? So it is hopefully lending itself to that type of environment where everybody could come in and have a place.
Yeah. I mean, there's parts of relationship anarchy that I love, in that the concept of co-creating our relationships with others, and each relationship can be defined on its own, and created and together with the person that you're in the relationship with. So in kitchen table polyamory, for example, you may or may not have romantic or intimate relationships with each of the people. I think if people were more intimately involved or emotionally involved, that it might be, and it was more of a closed situation where you're only having relationships with those people, it might be considered a polycule. Not that all polycules are closed. Sometimes polycules have relationships outside the main unit, but that's another term.
Without putting you on the spot, could you briefly describe what a polycule is then?
Well, I think a polycule is a group of people who have relationships together, close, intimate, and or emotional relationships together. And so sometimes it can be various combinations of things. Sometimes it's two couples that come together and they spend a lot of time together. And, they can be exclusive or like a closed polycule, or they could be open. So those people in those relationships have relationships with some or all of those people or not, you know what I mean? But it's a unit, and it can be 4 people, 3 people. No, I wouldn't say 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, more, you know what I mean? I think the interesting thing about kitchen table polyamory to distinguish too is that it doesn't, I might have said this already, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's having sex with everybody. I actually was talking to a client of mine who said that, they didn't like a particular dynamic within a group they were in because everybody was having sex with everybody, but there was no communication. And there was like lots of drama around it. So to me, I wouldn't consider that kitchen table polyamory, because I think the communication, open communication and honesty is part of kitchen table polyamory.
It's so interesting, right? The open communication makes the open part of the relationship beyond just the physical expression of it. But it's interesting to think of in open relating that we might be in a polycule that's closed. It's open relating but closed.
Yeah, I guess it's open in the fact that you're not just with one person, so it's not monogamous, but it's a form, you know.
It's a form.
The other term I liked, which I mentioned at the beginning, was garden party polyamory, which I think people keep making these up, but it's a variation, I think, of kitchen table polyamory, except that maybe the relationships aren't as close. So for example, you could go to a garden party or like a party and see your metamour, but not necessarily, you know, you can acknowledge them, but not necessarily want to interact or have a relationship with them, but you know who they are generally. You have a familiarity, I guess.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting though, right, to think about like garden party or all these other terms that might be new to us and how they come to be. And I think because, we have a desire for and also resistance towards using labels or descriptors, right? And, they are symbols that we might employ to kind of convey a thought or feeling, but maybe they don't exactly convey that. So then we tweak it and we come up with these new things. But, they're always going to be falling short of having all of the perfect descriptors, but we use them as an invitation, right? So we don't necessarily love using labels, but they might also help us to identify and say, oh yeah, like that resonates with me. I'm kind of like that too, or no, that's not me at all. So they kind of just to help us to understand where we might be coming from, but it's always open to interpretation.
Yeah, and you can define your relationship as you want. And I think that some of these terms aren't always used in the same way. So it's important to communicate. And it can be used as a starting point, for example.
Yeah.
It's interesting that I said that we chose to do this because those terms were coming up. And it's true, because someone recently joined the group that talked about shifting from kitchen table polyamory to parallel polyamory, which is our next term, because that could be a shift. I think sometimes people have the idea that they have to be one way or stay one way all the time, or that kitchen table polyamory is a requirement of polyamory. And I don't think it needs to be. Again, co-creating, deciding, communicating, right?
Yeah, and as you say, whether it should or shouldn't be, it comes to mind the idea of being having compersion, which we'll also discover. Right? Some people think that for yourself to succeed well in polyamory or open relating, you're going to automatically reach this plateau of compersion, and nothing says that you'll ever get there, or that you have to get there, or that you're failing if you don't. But we'll look into compersion in just a bit. But let's find out about parallel polyamory.
So it's a little different than kitchen table polyamory. So it's, as it sounds, it's when relationships carry on in parallel, run in parallel to each other and don't interact. So that might be that you have a relationship with someone that I don't really know or interact with, or I do, and they just kind of carry on without ever meeting. Maybe you may know about the other person, but have no interaction with them at all.
Yeah. It's interesting looking back at our little journey, how, and I think it's not uncommon. I think a lot of people do this, is that they start off in a sort of close relationship or a very close relationship, and then they decide to open up. And often it's with one other person, perhaps, right? They might find a threesome is more viable. They do that, and they might want to go out and look for somebody. They may be unicorn hunting, whether they're conscious of it or not. But then how the idea of playing separate, even in a different room, might be off-putting or make me feel insecure initially, but in time you might decide together that, well, maybe it is something we want to try. And so running parallel like that, in the beginning you might say, well, that's never that's not something I'd ever want to do, and yet you come to find yourself actually enjoying it. The idea, let's remain open and not yuck other people's yum, because while we might not initially think about it, we might appeal to us later on, or at least become knowledgeable or tolerant of other people's ideas as well.
Yeah. And I think if you choose not to do parallel polyamory, that's good as well. Like we
Sure.
have lots of friends who don't do that. They
Hmm.
do things together and that's it.
And it
And
works
that's
quite well for them,
and
right?
it works very
Yeah.
well. And I think that's cool. But for us, I think parallel, I would say we do kitchen table polyamory, but also run in parallel. It's a bit of a combination of things.
I
But
think
it
we do everything, right? Because we're also we relate openly and ethically, hopefully,
yes,
and we at times are swingers, and at times we're polyamorous, and at times we are relationship anarchists. We're all. I mean, we're pretty
we
fluid
do
that
it
way.
all. We do the like spectrum of the
We do it
smorgasbord
all.
of open relating. Yeah, I mean,
You
I
know
think
what's
what I
wonderful about it? Tara, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think what's
yeah.
beautiful about it is that we do what feels right, and we try not to do what doesn't feel right, and we do it in a very open way with each other and with our partners.
Hmm.
I
I
think
think
it's
what I like, I agree. I think what I like about parallel polyamory, or, just having my own relationships, I guess, with people, is that I get to experience something completely on my own.
mm,
And, I can meet people that are totally different than you. And I do meet people that are totally different than you. And it doesn't, for me, it doesn't take anything away from our relationship. You are still amazing and super and special for all the reasons you are. And these other people are as well.
mhm.
And I think that's cool. That's the human, the human condition is to want to connect with, I think, with people,
Yeah,
and
we are.
have
We are
this.
absolutely. We're social creatures, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. It doesn't take away from our relationship. It adds to our experience of the universe by being with other people. We remain also autonomous, and then it feels as though it's much more like a choice to come back to that person rather than
Mm.
having some kind of a contractual agreement, right? So it really lends itself to the demonstration of desire of wanting to be with this person as opposed to just feeling as though I have to be with this person.
No, exactly. Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the amazing side benefits that I never realized of polyamory, and I think people would be surprised, is that I feel very secure. It's the most secure I felt in a relationship before. A
Yes.
lot of that's because of the open communication and how we've learned to, we've been implementing our two-minute communication, but also because it feels like I'm chosen over and over again. And, you know, it's a special thing that you get constantly. It's constantly affirming,
Hmm.
to me at least. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is a V, like the letter
Hmm.
V, or
Yeah, nice.
sometimes call it a VEE relationship.
Hmm.
So, can you tell me
Well,
about it?
that's what we were speaking about before, right? So I'm at this part of the V, and you are here in your Metamour. My other partner is on the other side of that, and together they come down, and I'm in the middle of that. I am at the apex, I guess it was upside down, but I am the connector on those two, and you are in this V relationship with me and my other lovely.
Yes, so you're what's considered the hinge in the
I
V
am the
relationship,
hinge.
and we are the next thing, which is, I guess, the satellite. But let's just talk a little bit more about V relationships, because I think often, so what's interesting about V relationships, and is the case with ours. Now, I'm not sure if we're a typical V relationship because your partner, your Metamour, and I have a relationship, so we're not so far apart.
Mhm.
Um, but the idea around the V is that you're not romantically or sexually involved together, which is true. And what's interesting about the V relationship is the people on the ends of the V may not necessarily identify as open or polyamorous. They don't have to, right? They can
No.
be monogamous with you, even though you're polyamorous with somebody else. That's a possibility.
Well, it makes me think then of the solo poly people,
Mm,
right?
yes.
Right. So you might be polyamorous and be with somebody who is only seeing you while you're polyamorous and they are solo poly. They
Hmm.
hopefully they have the awareness that you are seeing other people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that both sides have to be poly. Or you could be the opposite, right? You could be the solo person dating somebody who is poly. It's quite fantastic. All the possibilities are amazing. All the different options and variables.
Yeah. So if you are solo polyamorous and have multiple partners, your partners might be called your satellites. That's another
Mhm.
thing. So you are the polyamorous person in the middle, and then you have more than two people Or you can also call the people in a V relationship a satellite partner. So it's usually used though to describe anyone you date who is not your primary partner. That doesn't mean you have to have a primary partner or somebody, but satellites are often those people that are at the ends that don't necessarily have relationships with each other. So you're the center, and then you have all these others.
The many moons to your planet.
The many moons to your planet, which is another term I heard of when I was looking up different definitions for a satellite, which is the term comet partner. So the distinction they made, which I don't know, is it important? Labels, like you said, I don't know. But comet, they call it a comet partner because maybe they're long distance and you don't see them as often. So comets don't come by all the time. So I guess the idea is that where satellites circle you all the time, comets only come once in a while. So that's that term came from.
That's what I was saying earlier about many of them seem to make complete sense, right? A comet is a fantastic descriptor to use because, yeah, it's somebody that you might know on occasion, but maybe not see on a regular basis. But they come into your life, and there's a strong pull to it, a strong attraction to that comet, and they come into your orbit on occasion, and then they're off again. And you may be yourself the comet to someone else.
Yeah, and you can be quite connected to these people, even though you don't see them as often. It doesn't mean that the relationship is any less important than any other ones. It just may be a factor of time, distance, etc. Why you don't get together. Like I would say, still a comet partner that's quite far away that I just recently saw, but I still feel emotionally connected to them, and they're still important to me. That doesn't change, right?
Right.
So yeah, so would love to know in the comments if anybody has any thoughts on any of these terms so far, and if you have comet partners or satellite partners or in a V relationship or whatever. So
if anybody has any comments so far, but the next one I think is one that often brings up a lot of comments, and that is unicorns and unicorn hunting.
Yes, exactly. And now we did a whole talk on this for an hour. We even did a survey before that one, and to get people's feelings on unicorns and unicorn hunting. So that was a really good episode. So we'll make sure we put the link in the comments here, or you can search for it in the guides. So we won't dive into it too deep, but it's always good to mention what it is because it still comes up. So in a lot of groups, especially if you're new, you may be said to be a unicorn hunter. So, and it's looked down upon quite
often, but not always. In fact, some people take a lot of pride in being unicorn hunters or being the unicorn. Right. So it really depends on who you speak to, right? Because some people might see it as kind of derogatory, and other people think, no, it's what I'm doing, and we like it, and so be it. But what is a unicorn, and what are unicorn hunters?
Well, I think the reason it's called a unicorn because it's this magical, mythical creature. That's the idea. But some people like that identity. But then I think there's things, if you do like that identity, there's things that go along with it. But generally, a unicorn in the context of non-monogamy is usually a single person. So someone who's solo. It's most often a bisexual woman, but it doesn't have to be, who's willing to be sexually and romantically involved equally with both members of a two-person relationship. So equally is the interesting term there. So, and it's, as I said, it's usually most often thought of as a bisexual woman so that they can have relationships with both the man and the woman in the relationship. Typically, it's often that. But men can be unicorn, man identifying people can be unicorns as well. But there's also another term called a bull that's often referred to for people who penis owners, let's say.
Yeah, but Tara, I gotta put the little asterisk there because it depends again who you speak to. Because I know of a lot of people who consider bulls to be just a guy who's going to come in and service a woman.
Yes. Okay.
Right? So it's basically he's coming in with his erect penis for the primary purpose. And in French, they might call it a rhino, which he's known for the horn, right?
Our friends told us that one. That's interesting. We were talking about this last week.
Well, also they were saying, our association to it, as you said, that a unicorn is hard to find and they're magical and they're well sought after. a rhino, it's not looked at as all that attractive, but it has a horn that people might want. So the fantasy, the desire, well, it seems to influence how we perceive of these things, right? The labels again. So there are people who don't want to be called rhinos. They think that they want to be seen for more than just their penis, just as there are unicorns out there who don't like to be called unicorns, right? They want to be seen for more than just being something that people check off in their box or fetishize as this tool that a couple can use. Because then the idea of couples privilege come in, right? The unicorn hunters often will be looking for this person, and it will not necessarily validate the other person's desires, intentions, feelings, any of those things. It's simply, well, we have a need that you're going to fulfill. We want you to come in and be our kind of little unicorn without much consideration for the other person.
Exactly. So that's sort of the definition. That's the definition of a unicorn hunter, is usually a couple who are looking for the unicorn to join them and make either a triad or a throuple, which is a term I don't like, or to be an occasional play partner, like you said, there for when they need them, and then otherwise not important in any other way. Not that it has to be that way, but it can be that way. And I think that's why it's often sort of frowned upon, because the unicorn is not their feelings are not necessarily thought of, but it doesn't have to be that way, like with anything.
Right.
So I think this is a common thing when couples open up. Like you said, they choose to find another person, a third, because there may be fear that their relationship will fall apart, or they'll experience jealousy or whatever, if they dated separately. So this is often an entry point for people.
It's the gateway drug for many people. But, in many ways also, I think back to our relationship, in some ways it felt safer to explore together, right? It was a good thing. Maybe, it's not necessarily an inherently bad thing to be looking for a unicorn. It could be wonderful, but it's the idea that we be transparent about it as much as we can, right? About being consenting in this, and let the person know what we're wanting and not wanting.
Yeah. And I think in the most cases of the people that we experienced right at the beginning, with the exception of one maybe, who was farther away, everybody consented to that arrangement and actually enjoyed that relationship. And we continue to have relationships with them, like friendships that, it didn't just end, so it continued. So to me, those people were consenting to that behavior, that activity. They were excited to be part of that. And I think, that's a positive outcome. But there can be some issues, particularly for the unicorn, depending on the situation they're entering. And I think that's what people are often worried for people in these situations, because the unicorn can unknowingly go into a situation that might be unstable. So maybe the couple's opened up because there's been infidelity, or they just want to have some fun, or one person feels it gets pressured in the situation. There could be lots of situations, right? And you might not necessarily know when you're entering that situation. And unfortunately, what can happen, as someone wrote in, I was looking at the notes, the comments on our unicorn hunting, they were talking about how when that sort of thing of jealousy arises, or one person becomes extremely insecure, then it's the unicorn that's blamed for it, and it can cause a lot of drama. So
yeah. But, also to that point, not always, but very often when we are looking for a unicorn, we might want somebody who's going to have a mostly physical, sexual role play with very little emotional involvement. But sometimes we do catch feelings for people, and it might trigger positions of jealousy or insecurity when one of the people connect more with the unicorn, and the unicorn connects more with one person than the other.
Yes. Right? Yeah, that's the thing. Have you ever been a unicorn, or do you want to be a unicorn?
I have, and I'm wanting to again. Yeah, it's wonderful. I love getting the attention and giving the love.
Yeah, but what made that situation work for you?
What made it work for me?
Yeah,
feeling that I was being invited was fantastic, because it made me feel desired, but also being able to explore each other's energies and going at it that way was lovely, but also feeling as though it was magical. Yeah, it did feel in many ways magical. It was the invitation for this unique experience that seemed quite positive.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
you knew the people, you had met them before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least for a coffee. What about you and the idea of being a unicorn? What do you think about it?
I mean, have I been yeah, I've sort of been a unicorn before, but again, it was in a situation, it was situational with people I already knew very
Right.
well, that I was friends and lovers with previously, and that
Mhm.
we had been together with, and then I felt
Right.
comfortable and knew them very well. And so, I already had established the trust with them, so it felt comfortable. Now, people proposition me all the time on the apps to join them, and it's not people that I don't know. It's not something that I really want to go for because
Mhm.
I'm worried about those circumstances, and also it's just not what I'm looking for. Like, I'd
Mhm.
rather have individual relationships with people or relationships with you and others. I find
Mhm.
those the most rewarding for me personally, but that's me. So
Mhm.
since we spoke a bit about jealousy and insecurity, it wouldn't be a day of talking about common terms without talking about compersion.
Compersion. Yeah, that's a term I'd never heard before being in polyamory and being open relating. And compersion, simply said, is the pleasure that we derive from seeing our partner's pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, happiness, joy, the happiness or joy of another person. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in this type of context, but is often used
Mhm.
as the big goal when people open a relationship or decide to be polyamorous, that I must have compersion.
Yeah,
And
and that's just not true, right? That creates false expectations. And then it also makes us feel perhaps inadequate if we compare and despair and say, well, other people feel, compersion, why don't I? And it's not like that at all. It is a phenomenon that may or may not happen. And we look for it. And if it happens, wonderful. And if not, that's okay too. But it's also often spoken of in the same breath as jealousy, as
mhm,
though it is one end or the other. And I don't subscribe to that idea. I think that jealousy is on a spectrum. Either you feel a little bit of it, or you feel a lot of it, or none of it. But it's not necessary to say that you're going to simply get pleasure in seeing your partners getting pleasure.
yeah, yeah. And you can certainly work towards
For
compersion
sure.
and practice it, and um, but it's not, like you said, the be all and the end all. And I don't think it's the opposite of jealousy. And
No.
I think it's really not serving us to think that we can get rid of jealousy altogether. Like, there can be a little bit of jealousy, and it can be okay as long as you understand how to manage it, and that it's not having an impact on your relationship. That's your relationships. That's the important part. If it is impacting it, then that's something that needs to be looked at,
Of course.
both internally, and something to work on together. Because,
And I know that for myself, when we first opened up, I didn't think I was too jealous, but then we came into a situation where I became extremely jealous. I was very insecure. I did not like the feeling at all. And luckily, with your great support, we were able to talk through it and have our wonderful communication about it. And now it's pretty much a non-issue.
mm-hmm.
Except not too long ago, I felt another little pang of jealousy. So, it's not to say that you're always going to be in the position that you're in. You may work towards it and arrive at a new position, but then every once in a while, you may get a little surprise. And knowing that it is survivable for me said, well, okay, it's a little bit uncomfortable at the moment, but I know it's not the totality of who I am or our relationship, and it's too shall pass. But I also know that there are things I can do to look at what's causing it and how might I affect the change so I'm less affected by it. And once you have that knowledge and understanding, it really is a game changer. It's a wonderful thing to experience, that you can survive these difficult feelings.
No, exactly. It's all about, like, dealing with those internal voices, the internal stories in our head, what we tell each other. And we make it sound like it's easy. It's not easy, but it is doable. We certainly worked with people to support them through that. And, I know someone recently joined the group, talked about, like, being okay when their partner is out on a date. And, I think that's such a common thing that people struggle with at the beginning. How to deal with themselves, what to do in those situations. And, there's always things that you can do, and I think if that's something that people are struggling with, then certainly let us know. We can definitely point you to some resources in the group. We've done tons of talks on jealousy, and obviously we work with people as well. So with that, wow, we spoke longer than I thought. Definitions. They're it's 45 minutes, and here we are. So before we go, just a reminder that we have Pride Parade in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. Sunday, June 25th, we'll be marching with Polyamorous Living in Toronto this year, which is nice. So we're partnering with them. It'll be a nice little group.
Yeah, great people in that group.
Yeah, great people. So come and join us. It's free. It's going to be fun. We had a great time last year, and we'd love to meet you in person. All of you who we haven't met before, and for those we've met before, come again. I know some people are coming that we've been chatting, I've known for seems like a long time, but never met in person. So I'm super excited about that. The other thing just to share is that I'm still offering a pay what you can coaching session. So I decided to do this in case people want someone to talk to about things that they are struggling with. And I'll make sure I drop the link to that. And yeah, I think it's always good to talk to someone, talk through something, and I'll make sure that you leave with an action plan of next steps. So you can do that for as little as the price of coffee or all the way up to my full fee, whatever feels good and aligned for you. So I'm happy to help.
That's wonderful that you are availing yourself in that way. It's beautiful. Talking helps.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather people reach out and talk than get some support than not. I know there's a lot of people in the group that are struggling with things, and so we see you. We've heard all these things probably before, and we can certainly help out through a session, or if you want to do some deeper work, we also have our group program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery. So, which is awesome. So that's it for today, my love. I'm happy I'll be seeing you hopefully soon.
You know we will.
Yay.
I'm looking forward to it. Happy
Monday, and thanks everyone for watching. Let us know if we missed any terms or if you want us to talk about a new topic. Bye.
Bye-bye.